Hey everyone, today we're looking at 10 laughably bad add-ons from Dead by Daylight's history. I was hesitant on making this video, because like 80% of add-ons are pretty terrible. However, I do think some most definitely stand out over others, for being just kinda silly in how little benefit they give, or how they're just counterproductive really. I'm not going to look at the obvious meme add-ons, like Clown's confetti bottle, or Trapper's padded jaws. These add-ons are kind of meant to be bad, usually with a BP bonus or a fun effect to compensate this. I want to look more so at stuff that should be viable, or seems to try and be viable, but just isn't. Stuff that seems like it has too high a rarity also. Let's get into it. Let's first start off with the Mother's Helpers for the Hillbilly. Currently in 5.3.0, this reduces the charge time of your chainsaw after being stunned by a pallet. Not the best, but it can be helpful. However, during the 4.1.0 PTB, this add-on Red increases movement speed by 0.2 meters per second. Okay, actually a pretty good effect so far. But the catch was though that this only happened when a flashlight was shining on you. This effect didn't linger either. It was only when a flashlight was shining on you. When this add-on was revealed, I remember there being a huge uproar over it. It was a big deal at the time, because this was released around Hillbilly's overheat changes, when he also got an add-on overhaul. So yeah, the fact that this was meant to be a good change for Hillbilly basically just annoyed a bunch of people, with its just incredibly narrow application and almost ridiculous activation requirements. Upon the live 4.1.0 release, these were changed, but I wanted to include them still, because I remember this event really well for some reason. It seems to have stuck with me. Moving on, we have the Scrap Tape for the Doctor. Interestingly, this add-on was initially introduced in 1.5.1 and was a yellow. In patch 3.5.0, it was then retired and replaced with the Iridescent Queen add-on. Later in 3.6.0, it was then reintroduced once more as a green add-on. This add-on reads, changes the shape of shock therapy to a ring with a range of 8 meters, a radius of 4 meters, and a thickness of 1 meter. So, if you don't understand this, I'll show it on screen. As you can see, it creates almost like a ring in front of you, but with an empty center. It's very strange, and seems like it only really works against you for proper gameplay, making it harder to land a shock attack. Apparently the purpose of this is that it's meant to pair with the interview tape add-on to get a circle and a line. Still, having to essentially use another add-on to support one which is already rare seems strange. If these two were both brown add-ons, I wouldn't even think twice about it, and it would be a cool gimmick. As greens though, I don't think it makes sense to have them be quirky like this. This shape is horribly awkward. Time to look at some Ghostface and his add-on, the Cinch Straps. These increase your crouch movement speed as the Ghostface by around 3%. This increases your movement speed by around 0.1 meters per second, which takes your base crouch movement speed from 3.8 meters per second to 3.9 meters per second. This isn't going to be enough to help you save time, nor give any discernible value when crouching mid-loop. Leather Knife Sheath, the green version of this, increases your movement by about 6%. Even this is barely anything. Comparatively, Pig's brown add-on, John's Medical File, gives a 6% boost to crouch movement speed. The odd thing about Cinch Straps too is that they haven't received any adjustments at all since their introduction in 3.0.0. A measly 3% boost to a movement type that you typically use sparingly anyway is just so bad. I don't really know how else to phrase it. So I was reading through the forums for bad add-ons and thoughts on what were the worst, and as I was reading, someone mentioned everything that applies Haemorrhage. And I just kind of thought, yeah, no, I totally agree. Haemorrhage, if you didn't know, makes survivors leave higher quantities of blood when injured, and also more frequently. It's going to be pretty useful if you have Bloodhound on, I guess. For add-ons, this just isn't worth it really. The worst case of this is probably something like Z-Block for Freddy, which is a purple add-on, applying Haemorrhage for 60 seconds when a dream snare is stepped on. Similar things to this are the Utility Blades for Pig, or the Serrated rated jaws for Trapper. To be fair, there are a bunch of add-ons that basically try to patch this up by making it Mangled and Haemorrhage, which is actually a decent combo, but largely because of Mangled just carrying that as a duo. Haemorrhage really isn't enough, I don't feel, to ever stand alone on any add-on. This status and the add-ons it appears on are just straight up bad, especially if that add-on is rare or very rare. That's just silly. Moving on to Polished Maedate. This is an Oni add-on that reduces the passive charge time of your power. If you didn't know, Oni's passive power charge is a little over 8 minutes without absorbing any blood orbs. With the Polished Maedate and its 50% faster charge, this brings it down to about 6.5 minutes. It's not nothing, but an add-on that decides to focus on this part of his power is just odd. Further, if you didn't know, Oni cannot even passively charge his power to full, only 98%. Meaning if you're using this to try and get your power without any hits, you can't even do that. This is one of those things that sounds fairly considerable. Saying out loud that it knocks off about 1.5 minutes makes it sound good, but trust me, that number is deceiving. This add-on isn't the only one of its kind. Add-ons exist like this for almost every killer, and they are just awful, buffing an already near useless part of their kit, and only doing so to a near unnoticeable degree. Legion have a bunch of bad add-ons. However, two I think that are particularly bad are both Frank's Mixtape and Stab Wound Study. These are both purple and do little to nothing to earn that spot. These were particularly bad when the base deep wound timer was around 30 seconds, instead of the current 20 seconds. Frank's Mixtape reduced the deep wound timer by 7.5 seconds after hitting someone in Feral Frenzy, who was already affected by deep wound, and Stab Wound Study simply reduced the initial deep wound timer by 5 seconds. Together they could lower the deep wound timer by 12.5 seconds, down to a total timer of 17.5 seconds. Wow, this sounds great. The issue with this is that when chasing a survivor, their deep wound timer is paused. When not being chased, this still gives them 20 whole seconds to not even complete the deep wound heal, but simply start healing it. These reductions to the deep wound timer are so laughably bad because they not only are rated as very rare, but further provide near to nothing in actual change. And finally, the thing they are buffing is so easy to counter that it makes them almost completely redundant. Even today with the lower timer, survivors still have plenty of time before they need to start healing. A reduced timer doesn't buff deep wound really. The point of deep wound is to force you to heal, instead of working on a gen or something. At best, you disallow someone from popping a gen whilst in deep wound due to the shorter time, but that is rare, I would say. The Hag's Waterlogged Shoe is what I want to look at next. This add-on is strange, especially for its rarity. This is another situation where it feels like it would be fine as maybe a brown or yellow gimmick add-on, but it shouldn't be iridescent. This add-on makes it so you cannot teleport to your traps. That in itself makes this just awful. Hag needs that mobility really. It's how she can so effectively trap people within an area. Further, the way this compensates you is by boosting your movement speed by 2.5% and applying the hindered status briefly to survivors who trigger traps. In its original 1.3.1 state, it didn't even give this boosted movement speed. Remember too that Hag at her base is a 4.4 meters per second killer. This only makes her a 4.5 meters per second killer with this 2.5% increase. As an iridescent add-on, this is far too counterproductive and does not provide nearly enough of a benefit to warrant such a huge negative. Putting this on basically makes you a slower Freddy without the dream world and dream projection. It's just bad. Even now in its 5.3.0 state, the only change it's received is a 2% boost to the additional movement speed it gives you, putting you just up to the regular 4.6 meters per second movement speed. Truly terrible. This is just a nerf. Spasmodic Breath is a nurse add-on that essentially just makes you worse. This add-on makes you a regular speed M1 killer for 60 seconds after landing a blink attack. This, a bit like the Waterlogged Shoe, is just straight up counterproductive. You don't want this on. If you're even a semi-competent nurse, blinks are far more powerful than regular regular movement. The main issue with this add-on is just how long this effect lasts also. After landing that hit, you're stuck without blinks for a whole minute. You're further slowed mid-chase, as you now have to spend time catching up without your blinks. I really don't get the purpose of this add-on. At most, you may catch someone out once, but after that, this is just straight up a debuff. Again, it's a green too. It's not an iridescent at least, but it seems too high still. This add-on would be pretty passable I think actually, if it was only like 30 seconds long. Having it be 60 seconds though is just far too much. Okay, next up we have videotape for the pig. This add-on was added in patch 5.3.0, originally a yellow add-on, added in 1.9.0. This add-on is really great actually, and allows you to instantly relinquish any pressure you have the potential to gain within the first 30 seconds of the match. It's amazing. It's amazing how cool this sounds, but how truly ineffective it is. This add-on begins the match with everyone wearing reverse bear traps, and you starting with none. This is awful for a few reasons. First off, it's iridescent. It simply shouldn't be. The point of traps is to slow the game down, as gens slowly pop. If you start with traps on people, either everyone has their trap go off on the first gen, or they all manage to remove them before the first gen and get on with the game as normal. Only you no longer have any pressure, or power even really, aside your stealth and ambush, making Pig, who's already a weak killer, even weaker. At its very best, this add-on is basically a guaranteed throwing away of 2 traps in the first minute of gameplay. The add-on that videotape replaced in 5.3.0 was the iridescent add-on rule set number 2. This add-on, oddly enough, also gave up all your pressure. This add-on made it so survivors couldn't see the auras of jigsaw boxes when their trap wasn't active. Most players will either know the locations, or alternately won't remove the trap until it's active anyway. Arguably, them seeing the auras of boxes prior to activation only made people waste their time removing inactive traps. Again, in terms of iridescent add-ons, both of these and the way they almost lose you pressure is just bad. Finally, let's take a look at some Death Slinger add-ons. Jaw Smasher, Marshal's Badge, and Gold Creek Whiskey. Slinger has a lot of bad add-ons. These are all current too. Most of them focus on reducing his terror radius. Marshal's Badge reduces your terror radius by 4 meters while aiming down sights. Gold Creek Whiskey by 8 meters when aiming down sights. Jaw Smasher increases movement speed whilst aiming down sights by 1%. Which I believe raises your movement speed from 3.74 meters per second to 3.78 meters per second. That's going to give you no discernible change, especially in the very minimal time in which you're aiming down sights. Rarely are you going to be doing this for more than a few seconds at any given time. Unless for some reason you play him constantly aiming down sights, this just isn't useful. Shockingly, this used to be 5% in its 3.6.0 version too. Still not good, but better, and certainly noticeable I imagine. The 2 terror radius based add-ons I feel are bad purely for the fact that most hits with Slinger aren't surprises. It's unlikely you catch someone off guard, especially after his terror radius was raised to 32 meters. These add-ons to change your terror radius size are just not going to make a difference, especially as the spear itself can only move across a distance of 18 meters. Both of these add-ons don't even make you unheard from the furthest possible distance when using the spear gun. This is just awful, considering how much you were compensating with these add-ons already. Alright, well, that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and be sure to drop your own thoughts, or an add-on you think is worth mentioning for being laughably bad, down below. Thanks, and goodbye.